Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Leo Salvaggio, and I am part of the Multimedia Labs here at Brown. And today we are going to be discussing Google Sites and how to get started with them. You can see my colleague Kelly back there in the right corner of our stream. All right, so we're going to get going with Google Sites. And of course, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. Cool. All right, so I think when considering Google Sites, we first have to ask, why would we use Google Sites? There are just so many different options out there. You've got Squarespace, you've got Wix, you've got Drupal, you've got Weebly, you've got all different types of things. And then, of course, there's the fact that like some people don't even have websites anymore. They have Instagram, right? So one of the reasons we might use Google Sites is because it is free. It is 100% completely free, which is really, really nice. You can make as many of them as you want for free. There's no page limitations or anything like that, which is wonderful. So, what I found it to be really good for are things like portfolios. If you want to show off like a photography project, or if you have like a project management portfolio that you want to show off all of the oh, hi, welcome.
Here for Google Sites?
Yes.
Yeah, just have a seat anywhere, just a couple of things there.
And so it can be really great for, as I said, portfolios. It can also be really useful for project websites. So my background is as an artist, and I do a lot of independent projects that need kind of a web presence. And I can't afford to spend $120 a year for every project that I do. So I will often use Google Sites because they're free and they give me everything that I want. They give me images, they give me text, they give me GIFs, what have you. And it can also be really great for small organizations. And one of the reasons that is because like a lot of other Google products, it has incredible sharing potential. So you can have multiple editors on the same website working on different pages. In fact, we will try that out today. I've never actually done it, but I know we can do it. So I've kind of set up the workshop to kind of test that a little bit. Another reason is it is extremely easy to use. It is drag and drop, meaning that there's no coding involved. And really, it's one of these things where it's like what you see is what you get. I have both Squarespace and Wix, and sometimes on Squarespace, I will format things using their block editor. And then when I go to preview, it looks different. And I'm like, why? What's happening? So this is really what you see is what you get. It also has very helpful templates. So if your focus is on the content, like let's say you have like a community newsletter, or you want to update things without a lot of hassle, then one of the great things it has are these templates. And the templates allow you to focus on the content. It takes care of the way that the site looks, the colors, the fonts, the transitions, the way the buttons look, and all of that kind of stuff, so that you don't have to build them from scratch each and every time. And they all look good. So you just find one that's your vibe, and then you just use it, and you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So um, it really takes some of the pressure off from the design aspect of things. It's also very easy to integrate with other Google products. So you can do things like embed Google Drive, documents or slideshows, or Google Maps or calendars, which is very useful. We talked a little bit about the sharing and editing permissions, which is also incredibly useful. Um, and it almost needs nothing to maintain the site. I spelt that site wrong. It takes almost nothing to maintain it. You can maintain it completely for free, whereas others you either have to pay, or you might need to update files or update plugins or something along those lines. That's not the case here. It's also really free to pair with Google Analytics, which is another free service that will tell you about the kind of traffic that your site is getting. Who is my audience? Where are they coming from? How many hits do I get a day? Which can be really, really useful. Google has their own domain host, meaning that like if you want to be like leosalvaggio.com, you can do it through Google, and then integrating it onto your website is like very easy. If you have your own domain from somewhere like GoDaddy or Blue Fly, Blue something,
Blue sky?
I can't remember the other one, then you can still use that, but it's just easier if you don't have it already and you go through Google.
Can I ask a question about?
Please.
So for the Google sites, can you create a domain through them or no?
Yes. So Google has their own domain thing and it integrates well with the Google sites.
Okay.
So that's what I'm suggesting.
And that's a feature you pay for though, the domain itself.
Yes, good
Okay.
point. The domain is something that you do pay for, and usually it's somewhere between $5 to $15 a year.
Oh, cool.
But you are not having to pay for any of the other stuff, so it becomes very, very affordable to do so.
Okay.
Yes, great question. Another thing that I like about Google Sites, because I'm what they call a geriatric millennial, is I love that it has GIFs. Like it supports GIFs, which if you've seen any of the MML's websites, we are GIF happy. So I love that. And then also, this is something internal for Brown, so maybe more relevant to staff or even potentially students while they're here at Brown. But you can also create a Brown Go link for it. And a Go link is a URL shortener that Brown has. So for instance, if instead of typing in mysites.google.com/brown/multimedia labs, I can go brown.edu/go/mml, and that just makes a much more contextual web address, which is really, really nice, and that you don't have to pay for. Yeah, but of course it's then associated with Brown because literally Brown is in the URL, so that's something to consider. All right. So nothing is perfect, so there are quite a few cons, and some of them are things worth considering. One is that template-based approach that I talked about, which can be really useful if you're not into design that much or not into like the aesthetics, it can feel really limiting if that is your thing, right? Because it's just like this is kind of the way that it looks. And not every project you're going to want that for. If you have a custom project where you're like, yeah, I want, the website to look and like a notebook, and I really want like lined paper, and I want like charcoal text, that kind of thing, then you're probably better off looking at something like Wix, because Wix kind of works a little bit more like Photoshop or Illustrator, where you have full creative capacity, but you spend just as much time, if not more, working on the look than as you do the content. So it's a trade-off. It really depends on what you want to do. The second thing is kind of a big one, which is that the native SEO, and SEO stands for search engine optimization. It's the way that your website ranks on search engines like Google is not very good. Which is odd considering that it's a Google product. I think that when the original Google Sites was really made for like community soccer teams that needed to post where their games were going to be and stuff like that. So I don't think that they were thinking like that this Google platform was going to be like for like an international artist or recording artist or something like that, right? So the SEO is not great. It can take a long, long time for you to move up in the ranks using Google Sites if you on its own. However, there's a few things that you can do. We'll talk about that in a bit. One of them is that you can add alt text to all of your images. And you want to do that for SEO, but you also want to do that for accessibility, so that people that are visually impaired that might be using screen readers can still understand what the content is on your website. So it's kind of a twofer, which is great. And every time you add alt text to your website, you are increasing its SEO. So if you need SEO right now, I highly recommend Wix. Not Wix, sorry, Squarespace. Their SEO is incredible. Within like the first 2 months of me launching my website, I got so many hits, and it was based on the search terms of my name, which was really, really great. I've done projects here where like even putting in the project name, like old websites were still coming up before mine that had nothing to do with my project. So yeah, there's something to be considered there. I would also say that it's not great for commerce sites. So if you're trying to create your own like kind of Etsy small business type of thing, it has no integrations for things like Stripe or any other kind of way to kind of exchange money for goods or shipping or anything like that. So if you want that, Wix and Squarespace both have great integrations, but it will not make a great commerce site. You could potentially use it as kind of a portfolio site and link it to your Etsy or Shopify or other kind of platform, but on its own, not great. The other thing is that there is no custom CSS or HTML. So if you do have some coding chops and you're like, well, I want a good foundation, but I want to be able to go in and change things, you can't do that here. There is an embedding option where you can embed things from third parties, but it can be a little tricky and it's not very robust. So if you've taken an HTML CSS class and you're looking to like to show off your chops, Google Sites is not the one, as they say. Any questions about like the pros and cons and what you need to kind of think about? Yes.
No, I'm right against this because I came in late, but would Google Sites be good for a video portfolio? Would it be able to do that?
I think it would.
Okay.
What I will say is that it won't host video natively, meaning like you can't upload your videos directly to the Google site, but you can embed through YouTube. So if you don't want to have a YouTube channel, you just make it private or unlisted, and then you can embed it in, and it looks great. We put in a lot of videos, and it looks really, really good. Yeah. Actually, that's a good question. Maybe we should take a moment here and ask what everyone thinks they're going to use a Google site for. So, do you want to talk a little bit more about your video site?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm hoping to pursue an MFA, and I know they often want like video portfolios.
Yes.
And I didn't really want to know about that. And then MMLs, like the Google Sites, email site.
I love that. Let's connect afterwards, because that sounds really interesting. How about yourself?
I want to build a website for photography for doing the website too.
Okay.
I saw my friend has one. It's really cool.
Okay, cool. We will talk. There's going to be some things specific to photography that we'll need to look into it here. And how about you, Juana?
So my partner has a film production company, and we need to start, like you said earlier, trying to put that portfolio of videos together.
Mhm.
And so I want to help him kind of, let's go.
Love that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's get started then. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to each go to sites.google.com in a browser that you're signed into your Brown email with. So when you get there, it should look something like this. You probably will only have a single thing. Let me know when you're there. Oh yes, the Duo Authenticate.
Yeah, it's a whole process.
All right, how are you two doing over there? I see your screen's good. It's loading? Okay. And then just sites.google.com, and it's SITES. Since I have a tendency to spell it incorrectly when I'm typing it out.
Okay.
Excellent. How are you doing? Awesome. Okay. So before we, you'll notice that there's a site in there already. And so what I did was I took the liberty of adding you to the site that we were just looking at. And before you click in there, I'm going to show you how to create a brand new site. So if you want to create a new site, you'll see that up here, there's a few options. You can start with blank, but there's also some templates. Now, the templates aren't very robust. If you go into template gallery, and hit general, you'll see that there's really only kind of, I didn't scroll down before. There's a few, there are a few more. So there's a photo portfolio. That's kind of cool. So you might want to take a look at these, but I'm going to show you from here, when you want to create a new site, you're just going to hit blank. And this screen will pop up. And you'll notice that it's untitled site, very much like untitled Google Doc or untitled slideshow, right? So what you're going to do is you're just going to put in the name of the site that you think you're going to want it to be, your name, portfolio site, what have you, and then you'll get started. But we already have a site, so I'm going to exit out of here. Oops. Go. And so now I'm going to click into the Getting Going with Google Sites, and it will open up here.
You want us to do that as well?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Let's. All right.
Excuse
Bless
me.
you.
Thank you.
So you'll see that this was the site that we were just looking at. And now that I'm in the background in the editor, you can see all of the different kind of components. You can see that, oh, this is a text box, and this is a text box, and these are containers, and these are text boxes. And so it's very drag and drop, right? So the next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to go to Pages. I'm going to go to Workshop Resources, and I'm going to hit Layout and Settings. So what I did for this workshop is I kind of made my notes the website. So we're going to talk about different things to cover. And the first thing that we're going to do, okay. The first thing that we're going to do, yes, please.
Sorry. When you went to Pages, these are pages you already created. It's
I
not
already
like
created.
that
Yeah,
wasn't
this
in
is
the
for
template.
exactly.
Okay.
This is for the workshop. Correct.
Gotcha.
And so the first thing I'm going to show you is over here. If you click Pages over here, you'll see that we have some navigation. You'll see that there is a section called Participant Pages. And what I'm going to ask you to do is find your name. So for instance, Juana here.
Mhm.
Click on it. And this is the page where you are going to test things out as I go through the workshop. This is going to be kind of like your sandbox. So everyone kind of gets their own page, right? And then I'm going to be going to another page and showing you how to do things, and you'll just replicate it on this page. If you don't want to replicate, if it's easier for you to just listen, know that this is being recorded and we'll send out a video of it later. So for some people, it's easier to grab the concepts and then figure out the technical stuff later. And for other people, they really want to follow along. So whatever works for you. All right, so once you're on your participant page, I'm going to be going back to this page. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is taking a look at the layout and the settings. So you'll notice over here that you have a few different options: Insert, Pages, and Themes. We're going to start with the Insert tab. So I'm going to ask you to click on that, and you'll see that there's all of these different types of options here. So I'm just going to click on a few of them and show you kind of what they do in this demo area. So I can add a text box by clicking here, and you'll see a text box opens up. And this text box works a lot like a lot of other text boxes, right? Like you can add bolds, you can change the fonts, and we'll go into this a little bit more later on. You can also do things like add images. So, and when you click on images, you'll have a few options: upload and select. Upload means that you're bringing it from your computer. Select means that you are bringing it from some kind of digital source. So it could be your Google Drive, it could be your Google Photos, or you can do Google Image Search, which I really like. So I'm going to do happy cat. I don't know why I want to see a happy cat. Oh my God, adorable. All right, so then I'm going to click there, and I'm just going to hit insert. And again, we will be going through this in their appropriate sections. I just want to bring a few things up so that you can kind of see the nature of things. Another thing that you'll see here are in the Insert tab are the layouts. So these can be really, really useful if you want to kind of like use these templated things. So what I mean by this is like you had mentioned doing a photo portfolio. So you could do a layout like this, where it already sizes these things and you just add images, into these things. Or let's say you want to kind of do, you could do like a restaurant menu where you could grab this and it's like 3 images of the food, the title of the food, and a description of the food, right? And so as you can see, all of these layouts, they just pop up into what are these different sections. And I can move these sections independent of the things that are inside them. All right, so that's just a little sample. We're going to get more in depth with this as we move along. But I also want to show you a few of these other things here. If you keep scrolling down on the insert, you'll see that there's a bunch of different options. You can add an image carousel, you can add a button, you can add YouTube. So for your video sites, you would use this YouTube object, and then you would just copy and paste the link of your YouTube video into there, and it'll pop up automatically. It's really nice. You can also add things like Google Maps, or you can add things like Docs. So I could go this, and because I'm connected to my Brown site, it's going to look at my current Docs and see what they are. I can search, and then I could literally embed them in if I want. So really, really useful. All right, the next tab that we're going to look at is the Pages tab. So there's a few things worth noting here. The first is that there is this little house icon that you see. That is your home page. So that is where people are going to land when they first come to your website, unless that you give them a specific link to a specific page in your website. And so for this one, when I click on it, it's the get going, right? So this is where I want people to land. You'll also notice that we have a bunch of other pages, and you'll notice that these pages are nested under workshop resources. You might also notice that the Why Google Sites, workshop resources, and participant pages also are part of our navigation menu, right? So if I wanted to go to workshop resources here, you'll see that underneath it, nested, there's the layout settings, the images, the text box, the G-Sites Quirks, and so on and so on. So these pages not only allow you to access the different pages to be able to edit and create your content, but they also are how you create your navigation for your user. And you can see here that it is sometimes useful to have a page that's just kind of a container, so that you make it easier for your participants. So like this could be like about pages, or on the MML site we have like our services versus our student opportunities versus our about, right? Those kinds of things. Any questions so far about inserts or pages? Cool. So let me show you how to make a new page. So down here, you will see that there's a few different options. Really? Okay, so the thing about Google Sites is that they never tell you when it updates, and like it won't change for like a year, and then you'll get a new feature every week for like 2 months. Oh, this is so great. Okay, so all right, I will come back to this. So here you can have a new page. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to say, call this test page, and maybe test page Leo. I'm going to hit done. Now, a few things happened. The first is that you'll see that the header image, and we'll get to this in a little bit, you'll see that the header image kind of copied from the last thing that I was on, which was layouts and settings. You'll also notice that it kind of automatically came into this nest of workshop resources, because this is where I was beforehand. If I said, you know what, I want this test page to not be a resource, I can just click and drag it out, and now it becomes part of the navigation. I could also then drag this into participant pages, and now it becomes nested under here, probably all the way at the bottom.
I have a question about
Yes.
that. So I noticed that when you brought it out at the top part where it has all the tabs, it says more.
Yes.
In like a when it goes live, will it show up as more or test?
Great question. Let's bring it back out, shall we? So notice now I put test page Leo before participant pages. However, let's take a look at this.
Okay.
So the website is dynamic. So depending on the size of the screen or the width that someone has their browser open, when it runs out of space, it will use this more option. And we can also show you, I was going to show you this a little bit later on, but up here is a preview option. And so this will show you what it looks like when you're not in the editor. And when you're not in the editor, and as there's more pages, you see that now they're all up there. And it'll continue going until it runs out of space.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Great question. All right. You'll also see that there's a few other options. There's like new link. So like, let's say you're doing that Etsy thing where like, this is like, oh, like I've made these earrings and I've made this battle armor. If you want to purchase it, go to Etsy. Then instead of creating a whole new page for it and creating a hyperlink, you can just create a link out, and that can go into your navigation, right? So I could do like, I could call this Etsy store. And then I could go, I think it's like Etsy.com. I'm assuming. And then you can have it open in your tab.
Where will it live though?
It will live in your navigation.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So the thing that I freaked out about was that there's this thing called new menu section, which I have not seen before. And I literally just made this workshop, so it must have happened overnight. Essentially, this I think is going to take place of the workshop resources. I will get back to that in a moment because there was a problem with this, and we'll go over that in a bit. All right.
Essentially, they've made it easier to organize pages, right?
Yeah.
Your navigation.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we talked about making new pages and how to nest and navigation. All right. Now let's talk about the header options. So the header is this section right here. It's like the top of your web page. And this comes from, I think, an old kind of idea in newspapers, which was in newspapers, like, there was always like, oh, you made the front page. But the question would always be, but am I above the fold? Because when you have a newspaper and it's folded down, the only part that people see immediately is the top half. Right? So people don't see what you scroll down immediately, right? They see the top half. And that is a core concept that you're going to want to think about when you're creating your websites, is that when someone clicks on a page, what is the thing that's going to arrest them? What is the thing that is going to make them stop and want to see more? Whether that's an image, a text, a quote, a video, because based on their attention span and their interest, they may not get to the bottom of the page where that juicy thing is, right? So always make sure that your top half is the most interesting. It's one of the reasons why I end up using a lot of GIFs for my header images. So let's talk about these header images. The header menu is a little bit different than all the other ones. You will never see these kind of options down here in the body of your website. So there's a few things here. The first is we can do change image. And again, with the select image, this is kind of nice. They have their own gallery of like textures and stuff as demos. But again, you can do a search. You can add things from your Google Drive or your photo albums, which is really useful. Give me something to search for.
A garden.
Garden? Okay. Is there another word we can throw in there?
Uh,
Bunnies.
Bunnies.
oh, there you go. Like it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Uh, oh my god, this one's. Oh yeah. Okay, let's actually. You know what? For these purposes, I'm going to go with this one.
Does it matter if it's horizontal or vertical?
That's exactly why I'm going to choose this one.
Okay.
So, in general, we like right now, especially those of us that are more into social media, everything is about the portrait, right? Like all of our videos are in portrait, but on your website, everything should be landscape if possible. Just because it means less scrolling. Because the worst thing is when you have something that's portrait and it takes up the whole page, and the person's screen is such that they can't actually see the full image. They have to scroll just to see the. That's not great. So I'm going to choose this to show you a few different things. So the first thing that you'll notice is that we actually have a kind of blacked out image, right? And that's because there's this option here for adjusting for readability, which are these sparkles. And usually when you hover, it'll tell you what it is. But, oh, there it is. So if you click it off, then you'll get the image as it is. But what it tries to do is it tries to figure out what, like, the value, the like brightness value of the image, and darken it or lighten it, and then change the contrasting text so that your page is more legible. In general, I would always keep this on, unless you are manipulating the image somehow. The other thing is that we used a portrait image for a container that is essentially landscape. So you can also do what's called anchoring the image, which is this little anchor here. You can choose where do you want it to. So right now it's like I'm going to choose the center of the image and crop around it. You could also do the top of the image or the bottom of the image. And in our case, because it's a portrait, I don't think left or right is going to make much of a difference. But if you had a panorama, right, that where the landscape was wider than the container, then you could also choose, do I want to do it from the right? Do I want to do it from the left? So that can be very, very useful. The last thing worth noting up here is the header type. So you can do a bunch of different headers. If you are doing something extremely visual, especially for your landing page, you might want to do a cover. And a cover essentially is the entire fold, that entire first half of the newspaper, first half of the website is the image, right? Then you can have what we had, large banner, where like you can see that there's a little bit underneath. You can have a regular banner where it's even smaller, or you can just have the title if you're like, yeah, I don't need images, right? The other thing that's worth noting here is that you do have this text box that comes in natively. So this will always be there unless you delete it for some reason. And you'll also notice that it's set to title, and you want that for accessibility reasons. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But that does not mean that you are limited to these objects. You can go into your insert and you can add things. Test button. Sure. You can add things like buttons. You can add things like placeholders. And so like you can treat this like another small mini page. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that, but there might be for some reason that you just want to add something to that above the fold, right? And so you aren't limited to just the text and the background image. All right. Any questions?
But the color of this like bar changes with the theme.
It does. And that we're going to save for last because I want us to focus on the content.
Cool.
But then I'll show you how to change the theme because the theme is global. So you're not going to be changing by section or by page. It's the entire website.
Gotcha.
All right. So let's move on to images. Oh, wow. It's 11:43. How did that happen? Okay. So now we're going to look at images. So here, what we're going to do is we're just going to play around with images and how to add them. So from the Insert tab, you're going to click Image, and I'm going to do Select. You can do Upload if you have things on your desktop or something like that that you happen to know. I don't know why these are in here, but like, okay, sure, let's do this.
That's from your last workshop.
Yeah, it's so random. Okay. So I have an image here. There are a few unique things worth looking at. The first is you'll see that my image is cropped, right? So, and you'll notice these kind of like little blue dots that are what we call kind of like handles. So I can select one and I can move it, and I can also stretch it. And when I stretch it left to right, you'll see what are these kind of columns. And so what those are called, like if you know about layout at all, those are like columns and gutters. So the smaller columns are the spaces in between. And then the larger ones are where you can kind of snap this image to. So you can take over the whole width of the website. You can do just a very short column like that. But that's essentially, those are kind of like your options for manipulating this text box. Now, or not this text box, this image box. Now you can also manipulate the image that's inside. And so what do I mean by that? So if I double click on this, you'll see that I have what's a portrait container with this kind of landscape thing. So like, let's say that I have, let's say that this is the size of the box that I want for the content, but I actually really want to zoom in. I can use this slider and like, oh God, I don't know why anyone would want to do this, but there you go. You can zoom into your image, which actually might be good. Like if you have images that have like, you know, like some kind of border or something like that, and you just don't want that in there, you can do that. You can also, if you're like, I want the whole image, you can choose, is it this one? I think it's this one over here, which will uncrop it. And so that will bring it back to like, this is my whole image. And you can, of course, make this bigger if you just drag it, right? So that's how you manipulate the images. And you can also, like, let's add another image in there. So if I hit upload, oh, nope, I don't really want to upload, but you know what? Screw it, it's there. Oh, this is weird. I can't. Okay, it's under there. Okay. Images, select photos. All right. So this is another interesting thing that will happen. If you make this image larger, this one will automatically move over, right? If I make this image larger and it supersedes the other one, then the other one will get smaller. So, and you'll see that like the space in between, that's the gutter that I was talking about, the small column. And then the larger columns are where I can snap these things to. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about adding alt text. So if you click on the image and these triple dots here, you'll see that there's an option for alt text. So alt text is not going to be seen on the website, but it's seen by screen readers. So it's great for accessibility, and it's also seen by Google when they're trying to for your SEO. So putting keywords that make sense like are useful. So it could be like you don't need to say that it's an image because a screen reader will know that it's an image, but you could say portrait of Leo Salvaggio. So those are keywords, people that are looking for my name, wearing an Adidas hoodie, and you can get as complex or as not if you want. If this was just like something super decorative, like just like a texture pattern or something like that, then you could just click this is decorative. But it's a good thing to kind of get into this habit, and then you hit apply. As you'll notice, it doesn't show up. And that's just because it's in the background. If you actually wanted to add a caption, you could go here and then add caption. And you'll see that all that did was that just added a text box. So Leo Salvaggio. But that text box should be completely independent. So I can move it down here. And you'll notice that like when I add a text box, like see how large this text box is? If I drag it and I put it under here, it's going to automatically size. So it makes it very, very easy. You can also do something like drag this text box in the space in between. Wait, I just had it. No. Oh, there we go. And you could have like text in between these two things, right? And you'll see that like when I go like this, that's showing me that these are an even width, right? Okay. The other thing that you can do is like, let's say that like you love this composition of things. I mean, this isn't good, but if you love this composition of things, but you want to change out the photo, you don't want to mess around with the sizes of the box, you can then go replace image and then select image, and then I'll pick something else. And so you'll see the box hasn't changed, but the image inside it has. All right. Sweet. Oh, and then there's one last thing. This will become a skill that comes in handy a little bit later, but you can also turn photos into buttons. And what I mean by that is that you can make them clickable to take you to another section. So this is very popular for like artists that like might want a contextual menu, like my photographs, and there's an image of the photo, right? And so the way that you do that is you just hit this insert link. Now we haven't talked much about links, but one thing that's really interesting is that Google automatically populates pages that you've already made. So if you want it to take you to one of the pages on your website, then it's already here. Or you can go www.brown.edu, or www.youtube, or whatever. But when you do that, essentially it will turn it into a button, and then, well, actually, let me show you. Because this is the other thing that I think I forgot to show you. So like, let's say we turn this into a button that goes to why Google Sites. All right. So the other thing I forgot to show you is here, which is when you want to test something that you've done, you're going to hit this preview button. And you'll see that now when I hover on this image, there's like this little hand. And on this image, there isn't. So if I click this, it's going to take me to there. All right. Next page. Text boxes. Okay. So here we're just going to be talking about adding text boxes. So we're going to insert, hit a text box. Now, the first thing that you might notice is that in these text boxes that I have here, there's different sizes and different fonts and such being used. Now, in this sense, okay, what am I trying to say? All right, let's say, has anyone heard of headers before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so headers are ways of organizing your kind of information. They're a way of like outlining, things. It's very, very important that when you're creating websites that you use headers appropriately, because that is also an accessibility issue. So what will happen sometimes is that someone will say like, oh, you know what? I just want, I just want larger text. So I'm going to make everything a heading. Mm-hmm. But when someone reads or when someone puts that through an accessibility reader, it's trying to tell them that it's an organizational type of thing. So it really messes up the experience. So the way it works is we have a few different options. And they are in descending order. So title, heading, subheading, then normal text, then small text. And so what will happen is someone with an accessibility reader might scan the headings for what it is they want, and then go into that section and have the reader read out loud what it is. So it's very, very important that you use headings appropriately. If you want to, like, let's say we had normal text and we're like, hi, this is Leo, and you wanted to play with things like the size, you can do that independently without changing the nature of the text. So I can go to here, I can change the font, I can make it, 30, and bold. But when I highlight all of these, you'll see that it's normal text, because for the screen reader, that stuff doesn't matter, right? So it's kind of like this meta thing. So you want to make sure that you are using these appropriately. So what that means is that each page has only one title, and that's usually the one that's up here. Then you organize your sections, usually using a header, and then if there are several things within that section, then you can use subheadings. We showed a little bit about dragging and dropping text in the last one, but the rest of this is pretty familiar. You can do things like adding bulleted lists, which is really useful. Another useful thing here is just being able to increase your indentation. Now, one thing that is kind of interesting that I will say too about these text boxes is the headings specifically. So I'm going to get rid of this. When you go into preview mode, if you hover over one of these, wait, no, that's weird. Hold on one second. Yeah, anchor links. So, let's go. Okay, so that's right. So it's not when you're in preview, it's when you're actually looking at the thing. You'll see that there are these little things called anchor links, and every heading has one. And if you click on it, it will copy and paste. It will copy and paste the link to that specific section. So if you have a really, really long, page and you just want to send someone to a specific section, you can. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. You both have to go?
Class.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Thank you so much.
No problem. I'll be sending a recording of this to finish up. So,
Yeah.
cool.
Thank you.
All right, sweet.
And I'm gonna email you about that video.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Thank you.
Okay. Wow, this took so much longer than I had time. It's different when there's people. Okay. So, the other thing that I want to show you is this idea of collapsible containers, which is really kind of fun. So here there's an object called collapsible group, and you'll see that it naturally has a heading thing. So we can say test collapse and blah, 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 right? So when you click on it, the content pops up. And when you're off of it, it accordions, which is really, really kind of fun. The other cool thing though about this is that it doesn't have to just be text. So you can do things like, I can take this and I'm just copying and pasting it. And I think if
Oh, that's neat.
right? So I don't think it'll work with things like videos, but it will work with text and with images, which is really, really useful. Wow.
You still streaming?
Yes. Yes, I am. All right. So the next thing that we're going to talk about are some of the Google site quirks and workarounds. So the first is this idea of an image lightbox. So what that means is typically when you are looking at like like let's say a photography portfolio, you would be able to click on the images and make them larger. And so you'll see that here, this like Google doesn't natively do that. It doesn't have an option for it. So there's a solution where you can do something like this, where you click on it and it takes you to a larger version of it. But you'll notice that it's in a completely different thing. So the workaround is to use Google Photos and use that using the image as a button thing in order to make it work. So we're going to do that now. So for this demo, you're going to have to go to this, which is bit.ly. Let me just, there we go. MML G Sites Workshop, and that will take you to a Google Photo album. So I highly recommend using Google Photo albums for this hack because it's all integrated, which makes it much easier. But one thing that you need to make sure is that the album is set to public. If it's set to private, then you can embed them here and you'll see them because you're the author, but when you publish it, no one else will be able to see them. So that's really important. But essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this this album, and I'm going to click on the image, and once it's here, I'm going to right click, and you'll see that there's an option for copy image address. And so I'm going to grab that, and then I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to click on my little, this is a placeholder, but I could have also dragged in like an actual image text. Placeholder, it can be either text or image or anything else. So I'm going to hit select image, and I'm going to go by URL. And then I'm going to Command V, paste the URL in. You'll see the photo pop up. So that's our way of getting it in here. To make it into a light box, what we're going to do is we're just going to click that insert link and put in the same link that we just did. And now, when we hit preview to test our work, if I click on it, it will take me to that image. And that's how you kind of get over that kind of like little quirk, if you will. The next quirk is going to be mobile preview. So many people are accessing websites over their phones or their tablets nowadays. The other thing is when you're looking at mobile, you want to see how users might be looking at your website through their phones. And so if we go into preview, you'll see that this section looks kind of the way that we want it, right? I want this text to be under quirk. I want this text to be under solution. This makes sense. But as soon as I hit the phone attribute to see it in mobile, you'll see that all of a sudden this doesn't quite make sense. We have these two text boxes above, and then we have this and this. And the reason for that is because we have a few different sections here, and that really is going to affect the way that our layout works. So the solution is to consider that we need to design from top to bottom and left to right. So the way that we would fix this is we would move this section into here and this section into here, and then hit preview again, and you'll see that now in mobile it's the way it's supposed to be, because what we did was we designed from top to bottom in a single section, left to right. So top to bottom and then left to right. So if we were to look at this section here, what would we think is going to happen here? What will happen is that we're going to get the text first because it's top to bottom, and this is top to bottom, and then left to right. But what we want is we want the text over Pikachu, this over Bulbasaur, and this over Squirtle Gang. So again, if we go into the preview, you'll see that this isn't quite exactly how we want it to go. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to grab this text box, move it over here, take the picture of Squirtle, move it over here, take the picture of Pikachu, move it under here, take this text, move it up here, and now we have top to bottom, top to bottom, top to bottom, left to right. And I'm going to hit preview. And now we have it looking the way that we want. So always make sure to check your mobile preview as you are building out your Google site. So there's a few more additional features worth talking about that Google Sites offers. The first is this idea of a footer. So a footer is a small piece of content, kind of like the navigation of the website that is on every single page. So it can be useful for adding your contact info, logos, stuff like that. And the way you go about doing this is by pressing down here on Add Footer, which if you're in the room you can't see, but hopefully will show up on the screen. And it will create a new section. You'll notice that the rest of our website is darkened out. So here you can add things like made by the Multimedia Labs, mml@brown.edu. And then if we click out and go to any other page, you'll notice that it's on the bottom of every single page, which is really, really useful. Another additional feature has to do with sharing. So what's great about Google Sites is that you can share it with other people, and other people can work simultaneously on editing pages and the like while you're working. And this looks so much like other Google products like Google Docs and what have you. So if you go up here to the Share with Others section, you'll be able to see that there's two options. You can add people here via their email, and then you can decide whether, you can add people here via email, and then you can decide what permissions they have. So you can make them editors or viewers, and also transfer ownership, which can be really useful. And then the other thing that you want to look at over here is you want to make sure that when you're doing it via links, that your published site is set to public so that anyone on the internet can find your website. If you're doing something internal for Brown, you only want people with Brown access to be able to see your website, then you can change this to Brown University. If you want it an even smaller group, only people that you invite, then you can change it to restricted, and then only the people in this group will be able to see what you're doing. Last thing worth looking at is the idea of themes. So themes are the ability to change the way that things look, and they're going to happen globally. So there's lots of themes to choose from, and they're going to decide the behaviors and the design of elements like paragraphs and headers, but they are limiting. So it's worth considering a few things. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go back to our first page here, and then I'm going to hit themes. Now, right now I have the theme impression, and you'll see here that I can do things like change the color. And so if I choose yellow, then all of those highlights that were in this color are now in yellow. And you'll also see that I can change the font. So I can go from do different things like this. And then I could also change the theme itself. So I could go to something like Diplomat, which is completely different and has a completely different feel. And so you can kind of play around with these and find which ones you like the most. The other thing that you can do is set up a custom theme. So this is really great if you already have your own branding set up. And so you can click on here and you can call it maybe like Leo branding. You can do things like add logos, add banner images, which is great. And then you can choose from some preset colors, or you can add your own custom colors. So again, if you have a brand and you know what colors you want to use and such, then you can kind of add them here. I'm just going to use a set of preset colors, so I'll choose this one. You can then choose fonts for the title and the heading. So let's make this one a little bit more fun. I'm going to make the titles and headings a bold in that font, and then I'll make the body text something a little bit more legible, but still kind of fun. Maybe this one, normal, and then create theme. And so you see how that changes everything. And then you can change things even more. So like you can go here to text. You can choose what you want to change. So our headings are very, very small. So if I went to headings, I could change the size like that. And you'll see that here we'll probably have to change all of the color of that text and what have you. So this can get very customized and intense, but it might be worth putting the time in if you already do have branding. If you don't, then I just highly suggest using one of the preset themes. The nice thing is that you can change this at any time. As you publish things by clicking publish and what have you, you can see how different all of the changes that we've made are. You can just change the theme at any time, and you can always go back to it as well. So I can just go back to my impression in this color, capital. Oh, was it capital or was it narrow? I think it was narrow. All right. And that pretty much concludes the kind of like beginning, get going with Google Sites. So thank you so much for your attendance. We will be submitting this recording of the workshop out to anyone that couldn't make it. And yeah, we hope to see you in 2 weeks for our workshop on creating virtual reality using A-Frame, which will be run by Kelly. So thanks, everyone. Have a good one.